What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. Another Friday, another episode of Why Are We Bullish? Got an awesome panel today. Very excited to have them all, and some familiar faces as well. So I hope you guys have all been having a good week. There's been plenty going on, and I'm very curious to hear everybody's reason for being bullish this week. Of course, this is live. Anything can happen. So I defer to my friend Bill here.
Live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
My favorite thing about playing that clip at the beginning of every show is watching backstage the reactions of people who may not have seen it before, seeing who gives me smirks and who doesn't. But nonetheless, thank you guys for being here. Of course, like, subscribe, share, all those things help a ton getting this content in front of more eyeballs. I am Ben with the BTC Sessions. This is your daily session.
HodlHodl Bitcoin.
Before we bring in our panelists, take a quick look at where we are in the market right now. I'm bringing up timechain-calendar.com, and simultaneously along the side, I'm going to bring up the live chat. Everything that you say in the chat will be live for the world to see from here on in, for better or worse. Back to Timechain Calendar, we're sitting at $62,984 per coin. A single US dollar will grab you 1,588 sats. In terms of fees, next block, you're looking at 16 sats per byte, 8 sats per byte. Anytime. Man, it's not often that we see single digits, in the past year or so. So it's always interesting whenever I see that. In terms of Bitcoin mined, 19.66 million of them. That is 93.63% of the total supply. And the halving is coming up in 28 days and 21 hours. It's coming quick. Shout out to sponsor of the show. Actually, first up, if you are sorting through the tutorials on the channel and you need some additional hand holding, it's not quite cutting it, you can head over to my website, btcsessions.ca, and book me for private one-on-one education sessions. Shout out to sponsor of the show, HodlHodl.com. If you're buying Bitcoin and your priorities include peer-to-peer trading, instant self-custody, and no KYC, this is a great place to be. You can sign up with just an email address. Once you're in, you choose your currency, payment method, and an amount, and you can start viewing offers immediately. Links for them are down below. Now, when you do stack some sats, you're going to want to secure it with some of the best hardware on the market. I love CoinKite and everything they do. I've put out a few videos on the new Cold Card Q, which is badass. But if you want to pick up that or anything else that they do, like the Mark IV, tap signers, the block clock, open dimes, all those goodies are over at coinkite.com. You can use code BTC Sessions for a nice discount at checkout. Now, backups are important as well. Cedar is killing it. I love their disk and capsule design. This is an excellent way to back up your seed phrase in solid steel to protect it from the elements like water, fire, corrosion, all of that. It comes in full kits so that you can stamp 1 or 2 seeds if you ever need to swap them out. It's just grabbing the cheap discs that you can slide in and replace. And you can add additional info on there too, like wallet names, derivation paths, all of that. Check them out, cedar.io. There's links down below to get you the best shipping options. Nunchuk has you covered when it comes to assisted multisig. This is a multisig wallet you can set up on your mobile device with things like Tab Signer, Cold Card, and plenty of other hardware options. Once it's set up, you got baked-in inheritance planning so that your Bitcoin gets to your next of kin if anything should happen to you. And on top of that, the whole thing can be done without KYC, so you can set it up and have it work for you without having to give up your private information. And the last shout out of the day, Start9, your sovereign computing solution. These guys have plug and play devices to host not just your Bitcoin stack, but your digital life. So you can host things like your Bitcoin Core node, your Lightning node, BTC Pay server, mempool.space, also files, passwords, photos, Nostr relays and clients, AI tools that aren't censored, all kinds of goodies. They have everything from entry-level devices all the way up to what I'm running, which is the Start9 Server Pure. Check them out at start9.com. And if you're looking at the Pure, you can use code BTC Sessions with a plus sign at the end, and that will get you 18% off. Anyways, guys, enough of my rambling. Let's get in our panel here. I want to welcome to the stage Matyas from BTC Prague. I want to welcome to the stage another Bitcoin Ben. There's many of us, but I'm glad to have one on the show again today. And John Dennehey from My First Bitcoin. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. I'm very glad to have you all. I'm going to give us all a little shuffle around here so that I see everybody where I intend to. I like to shuffle things around a little bit, but thank you guys for being here. Let's do a quick round of intros so everybody's familiar with you. Matyas, I'll pass it your way. Can you give yourself an intro? Who are you? What do you do?
Hello, everyone. Greetings from Czech Republic. I'm Matyas, and I organize Bitcoin events since 2020. Together with my brother, we have two events. One is Chain Camp. It's Czech and Slovak speaking Bitcoin-only conference. And the second one is BTC Prague.
I am very excited to attend. It's coming up pretty quick here, a couple months out. Hey, like 2.5 months, something like that in that realm.
10 weeks. Yeah, I'm not counting months anymore.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I will say it was one of my favorite events last year. Thank you for having me. It was legendary. So I'm looking forward to it again.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Ben, I'm going to toss it down to you. First time we've interacted in any actual physical speaking sense, but it's really good to meet you, man. I saw you blow up on the internet. But I'll let you introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Sure. My name is Ben Hart. I'm pretty new to the Bitcoin space, really. I didn't start buying Bitcoin until 2019. My son told me about Bitcoin, I want to say like in 2013, 2014, and he bought a few Bitcoins for I forget how much, but whatever the really cheap price was back then. And I just didn't think it would work. I thought it was an awesome concept. I loved it. And he sold his Bitcoins, I think, when at 20x or something like that. And so then I watched it go up in 2017, and then he had to blow off top, and it dropped 85% or something like that. And then I just kept watching it, and I was studying it, and I understood the whole concept. And my son was reading, Friedrich Hayek and Mises and all this, Austrian economists. So he was really into it. Unfortunately, he sold his Bitcoin I think on the way up in the 2017 thing, which was good. He made some good money, but I just watched it, and then my thesis was that if it came back from the 2018 crash when it dropped 85% or something, if it came back from that, my thinking was that it's real. Because my big objection to it was that if Bitcoin ever got big enough where the government was concerned about it, it could crush it. That's what I thought. And but then when it started coming back in 2018 or 2019, 2019. I bought some like in 2019. I want to say for around 11,000 a coin, and I think it quickly dropped right after I bought it to like 6,000 a coin. But I was pretty convinced by that point that it was going to come back, and was convinced about the technology. Now I'm an English literature major. I'm not a techie, so I had to really understand it conceptually. I studied it for thousands of hours, and one of the things I did, since I'm an English literature major, what I try to do is I write a lot of books, right? And because once I understand something, I try to write about it. I was a speechwriter for Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, and for George H.W. Bush, and I've written a lot of books, and I'm in the advertising business, and so I had to once I felt I understood conceptually, I felt my niche in the space was sort of as a Bitcoin explainer, that my goal was to be able to explain it so a 10-year-old can understand it. And that's what the book does, and that's what I generally try to do. I don't out-tech anybody. I figure if I can understand it, then maybe I can communicate it to people who really don't know anything about it. And that's really what it's all about, is trying to explain it to people so that Bitcoin gets adopted, because adoption is really what we want.
Can you say the name of the book?
It's Bitcoin, a beginner's guide, and and sort of a subtitle is your off-ramp from the corrupt political system and protection from economic collapse. So it's your off-ramp from the corrupt political system and protection from economic collapse. And it's kind of a beginner's guide. Like I say, for the first quarter, explains kind of how it works conceptually. And then it gets more into the philosophy behind Bitcoin, you know, the economics. Bitcoin, one of the great things Max Kaiser says, and I think it's a great expression, you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And what Bitcoin does is it forces you to just learn a lot of things that you didn't really know about before, or might not have known about before. Requires you to learn about economics, about political systems, about engineering, you know, and something about technology. So, you know, Bitcoin, there's just so many rabbit holes that you can go down in Bitcoin world. There's the technology rabbit hole, there's the economics rabbit hole, there's the sort of engineering rabbit hole, politics rabbit hole, and it's just so incredible, just so many avenues that you can go down. And so it's intriguing for that reason. And sort of my mission, one of my missions is just to explain to people what makes Bitcoin different from all the other cryptos out there. There's like 30,000 other crypto assets. And when people ask me, you know, hey, what crypto coins do you think are the best? I understand that you're into crypto. And sort of my motto is, you know, it's Bitcoin, it's not crypto. Bitcoin is not crypto. You know, it uses elements of crypto and blockchain and so forth, but that's not what makes Bitcoin unique. So that's kind of a long explanation.
The Bitcoiner's struggle is when a family member or a friend finally gets into Bitcoin and they ask you what you think about Dogecoin, right? Like, those are
Ethereum, or, you know, and then
it's such as life, though. It happens, right? That's but I mean, that's why we do what we do and continue to try and build and educate. And speaking of education, John, welcome to the show. I'll just let you say who you are and what you do, because it's right up your alley.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So my name's John. I'm originally from New York. I moved to El Salvador 2.5 years ago to found a Bitcoin education nonprofit, which is called Mi Primer Bitcoin, or My First Bitcoin. We had, since inception 2.5 years ago, we have taught about 35,000 students in person here in El Salvador. And I think more exciting than that, everything that we do is open source. So like our flagship book, which is this 10-week Bitcoin diploma, it's now actually being taught in the public school system. We taught it in the public school system. Now the Ministry of Education has kind of taken it, and they're also teaching it there. And because it's open source, it's been translated. The last version was translated, the 2023 version was translated into 8 or 9 languages and taught in probably 12 or 15 countries, including some other public school systems, which all of these are world firsts. Literally this morning, we came out with the new 2024 version, and we have community groups around the world working on translations. There's 25 active groups translating into their local languages. We also have a node network of independent Bitcoin educators, so people that use some of the open source materials that we've developed and have similar philosophy and ethos. And that started a year ago, and we are active in 21 countries at this point. So we also we just started, we've done 2 so far, education on conferences, which are kind of like a decentralized Bitcoin education conference. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here on the show today with you guys. Really excited to be here in El Salvador. Really excited to be here in 2024 as we're at the edge of, I think, what's going to be a really great change.
Awesome. Well, I think it's going to be quite the year, and really appreciate what you guys are doing down there as well. Okay, well, with that, we're gonna dive into the meat of the show. And everybody in the chat, thank you for being here as well. This is, if you're unfamiliar, this is Why Are We Bullish? Very simple premise of the show. Each one of us comes with a reason for being bullish. It can be really anything, a personal experience. It could be an app, a book, a news item, a new video that you saw, really whatever floats your boat. But the flow of the show is, number one, somebody's going to drop a reason why they're bullish. This is their chance to rant and talk about what they're excited about. Number two, all together, we're going to riff on that reason, comments, questions, whatever rabbit holes we go down. And then number three, we're going to rotate until we've all had a turn. So reason, riff, rotate, simple. So I'm gonna get us started tonight, and I'm gonna be a little a little vague with mine, but in general, I'm kind of bullish on a couple different things. So number one, that Bitcoin is kind of this free market of ideas, but it filters through those ideas very efficiently, and it allows those that offer the most signal for people to gravitate towards those types of products and services and events and so on and so forth. And so I've kind of seen this over the years, wherein obviously there's a wide kind of array of different Bitcoiners, and there's going to be always like the super hardliners that like make zero compromises, and then there's going to be, I guess at the far opposite end is going to be like the crypto people, right? So we'll go with that, but like there's a pretty big spectrum there. Now, what I'm kind of bullish on is, to a degree, the hardliners that make absolutely no concessions. And why I say that isn't because that I agree in every single respect, right? Like there's always going to be things where, like, for instance, like I use Liquid a fair amount for day-to-day stuff as like my monthly kind of float, because I live on a Bitcoin standard, and it allows me in high fee environments to kind of be in this middle ground with trade-offs, but then from there easily swap into Lightning if I need like a daily spending wallet, or swap into on-chain when it's time to put away for savings. But in the interim, I'm not incurring a lot of on-chain fees. And for some people, that's a step too far. It's like that, I don't want to make that trade-off. That's totally fine. The reason I say that I'm kind of bullish on the hardliners that make no concessions whatsoever is because what it does when you get those types of people, it actually shifts the Overton window towards more self-sovereignty. And so what I'm getting at is not every person is going to have, run a node, have full self-custody, coin join, do all of the things that a good little Bitcoiner does. But when you see the people that are constantly kind of on top of those things, saying like, hey, this is a trade-off, this is a trade-off, this is a trade-off. When you see stuff like that in and around the messaging that's put forth, what it does is it shifts a person that maybe would have been, I'm just going to leave my Bitcoin on Coinbase. It shifts that person to thinking, maybe I should self-custody. Maybe I should get a wallet and like, or maybe I'm going to use like, I was just sitting it on an exchange, but maybe now like I want to use my Bitcoin. So maybe like I'll have a kind of in between. Maybe I'm using like a custodial Lightning wallet, but my savings are in cold storage. And so it takes everybody where they were, and it shifts them a little bit more self-sovereign when you get kind of those extremes of self-sovereignty being, getting a megaphone and saying like, guys, let's put in a little bit more elbow grease here and try and do more to be resistant to like top-down coercion and confiscation and censorship. And so I love that. And the same applies to, I think just in general to Bitcoin content, to Bitcoin devices and apps, when it comes to things like being open source, when it comes to things like, all of the features and the bells and whistles that you might want out of a wallet, and like the trade-offs that certain devices and wallets might make. And it also comes to that when it comes to events and conferences and speakers and all that kind of stuff. It kind of, over the entirety of the space, you're going to have a range. But what those voices that really try and hone in on signal and make no exceptions do is that Overton window gets shifted, in my opinion, in a good direction. And it doesn't mean that you need to agree on every single point with the most extreme of those voices, but it does mean, in my opinion, that the middle of that window goes towards self-sovereignty and more thoughtfulness when it comes to what they use and where they go, and the way that they communicate Bitcoin to others, and where they direct them when it comes to devices, apps, content, events, whatever it is. So yeah, that's kind of my. I know it's a little vague, but I hopefully you guys are kind of picking up on my general message here. I don't know. Does anybody want to jump in regards to this kind of Overton window shift?
Yeah, I was going to say, Ben, that when people come up to me and say, how do I buy Bitcoin? And they don't know anything about it, I might give them my book, read the beginner's guide on how to do it. But they'll say, well, how do I buy some like right now? And I'll just say, buy an ETF, buy IBIT, BlackRock or Fidelity, just do that. And then once you're kind of into it a little bit, then there's something called self-custody. Then there's something called be your own bank. But that's a little bit technical. It's a little bit complicated. But if you want to do that, then maybe you buy some Bitcoin on Cash App, and then maybe you buy a hardware wallet. You buy, you get a Electrum or some hot wallet and move some into the cold storage wallet, and then you just do it a few dollars at a time and learn that way. But I always just tell people, buy the ETF. That's just the easiest way to get in, because at least that's going to protect you from the government's fiat money printing press. It's not going to protect you it's not going to give you unconfiscatable money, because if your Bitcoin, if your money's on Coinbase or it's in an ETF, it could be confiscated, but it does protect you from the government's fiat money printing press. So, so that's what I tell people. And then if they want to progress further, then you just tell them how to do that and just walk them baby steps through. But I also do like the Max Kaisers of the world and the hardcore Bitcoiners, because that is the ultimate goal, but it's not going to be for everybody. It maybe 5% of Bitcoin holders will ultimately go, that route. But and ultimately, I'm kind of where Michael Saylor is in a way. I don't want the United States to go away. what I would like is for the United States to, get sound money, and maybe Bitcoin can be is able to force through free market pressures to force the dollar to become a better money, and that would be a good thing.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that, let's say, I don't know, a decade out, and maybe not even that long, but a decade out, Bitcoin is growing quite a bit. There's more and more, like maybe we see repeats of El Salvador, small nation states with either no national currency or failing national currencies, just going to a Bitcoin standard, more companies using it as a treasury, less people using US treasuries. Do you think there's a situation in which a repeat of the Gold Confiscation Act gets played out in the US?
I mean, I hadn't thought about that until I guess Cedric Youngman. I was on his podcast and he brought that possibility up. And yeah, I mean, FDR, he required everybody to turn in their gold, right? In 1933, 1934, everybody had to turn in their gold, or people actually went to jail for not turning in their gold. So yeah, that is a possibility. In which case, we'd have to all go to El Salvador, I guess. But yeah, that is a possibility. I mean, one thing I've learned since the pandemic, since all the COVID mandates and everything, is that the government will do absolutely anything to maintain power and to impose its will on people. So, that is a possibility. I mean, if a lot of people are going to turn in their Bitcoin, put their Bitcoin in an ETF, for example, sort of a government, monitored ETF, rather than go to jail. So yeah, I think that is a danger.
John, I'm curious, given that, El Salvador, legal tender and everything, what is the inclination for people that are, obviously not everybody in the country is using Bitcoin, but the people that are, is it largely different economic circumstances, so that impacts whether people are on chain or self-custodial Lightning versus custodial Lightning? When you hear Ben saying 5% of Bitcoiners will will defer to custody and, or sorry, will self-custody, and then others will be deferring to some sort of custodial model in some way, shape, or form. What's your kind of take and your feel given what you've seen thus far?
Yeah, so education is the solution. That's probably a drum that I'm going to keep beating today
Yep.
and every day. But there's a very strong correlation between how much people know about Bitcoin and how much they value things like self-custody. So here in El Salvador, there's a government wallet called Chivo, which is a custodial wallet, obviously. And that is, I mean, initially there was like a bonus. There was $30 that you would get when you downloaded the wallet. So that was a pretty strong incentive. So Chivo remains a very popular wallet that a lot of people use here because it's easy, right? Like you don't really have to think about it. You could toggle back and forth between dollars and Bitcoin. And I think there's an inherent trust to it because it's like the government wallet. So I don't really understand this, but let me go with this one that the government put out. I know very few people that are educated on Bitcoin that use Chivo wallet, even though that's the dominant wallet here. Like many students that take our courses will have one wallet downloaded when they begin the course, and that's Chivo. And by the time they're done with it, almost none of them are using it. So I think there's just a strong correlation between how well educated you are and how much you value these certain aspects of Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin isn't just a different way to pay a bill at a restaurant, right? Which is maybe how some people think of it initially. It's so much more than that, and the more you are educated on that, the more you realize that you're missing out unless you're doing it in a specific way.
Do you think that trend, that education, does it reach a large percentage of the, and by large I mean like, you know, a quarter of the globe? Does that reach a lot of people given enough time? Clearly that's your goal, right? To try and educate as many people as possible. What do you think will be a success in terms of people understanding and self-custodying? Like, is there a threshold that you think would be great to reach?
I think it's really about people making their own decisions, right? So it's the threshold isn't necessarily that X% of people are using custodial or non-custodial. It's that X% of people are making a conscious decision one way or the other, right? Like people might choose a different solution than I would because they have different circumstances, but it should be their choice, right? And that's the ultimate thing. That's what actually excites me about Bitcoin, is not necessarily that it's a better money, but it's a way to have more control in your own life and the second and third order effects of that.
Interesting. Now, Matyas, you are in Czech Republic. There's a lot of Bitcoiners there. You guys have cultivated quite a community. What would you say, like, out of the people that would attend your events and people that are present, like, are they pretty in tune with like the whole self-custody thing? Like, where are they at versus your average newcomer that comes to an event? Like, what's the feel in and around your part of the world?
I would say that yes, they are kind of gravitating towards the self-custody and freedom part of Bitcoin movement, because we were influenced by our history, by communism. Yeah, we were under communism until '89, so it was more than 40 years. And that pretty much taught people to don't trust authorities and take care about themselves. So I can see it around myself. People like to geek out, try tools, and it's a scale. You know, Bitcoin is just one part of the sovereign individual stuff. And I pretty much believe that it's the only way to go in the future if you want to be successful and really free. And it's a natural movement, I would say. Yeah, everything is getting faster. We can travel all around the world. you have to be a sovereign individual to be really, really free. And it's a huge rabbit hole. You can go into flag theory, then making yourself sustainable. So growing your own food, having guns. There are so many rabbit holes only in this sovereign individual thesis. And I really like it, and that's a part of what we really trying to push through our conference and motivate people to study this this kind of approach.
I do enjoy the cross section of these little I don't know, like subsets of culture that sprout out of Bitcoin. I do find it funny in certain like, I mean, there's the stereotypical, like, I self custody and eat steak and shoot guns and do push-ups 100 a day minimum. There's all of that, but I do find it, like, I kind of enjoy that. Like, even if like, I mean, I'm in Canada, I don't have any guns, so but like, I do enjoy and appreciate where some of these things come from, like the freedom-minded individuals, because in general, like, Bitcoin is a tool that promotes self-sovereignty in a lot of different ways. And as Ben alluded to, one of the first ways is self-sovereignty from monetary debasement, right? Step one. And then if you're worried about your literal confiscation, then self-custody is a hedge against that. And you get down these other rabbit holes of sovereignty from, like, what do they even refer to it as, like the food industrial complex, and like all of the garbage that they're shoving in our foods, and like being self-sovereign in terms of being able to protect oneself. And I get all of these, and I guess it harkens back to the point of the Overton window in all of these senses gets shifted in a way where people are like, hey, it's great that you can protect your money with keys, but how do you protect your keys? And there's an artist named Manex, and he has a slogan. He says, keys protect Bitcoin, guns protect keys.
Yeah, I often call Bitcoin the Second Amendment for your money. It's a great point about the Czech Republic having been under communism, and I think sometimes here in the United States, we're not sort of cognizant of what the rest of the world is like. The United States is relatively stable compared to the rest of the world. Venezuela inflation is 1,000%. Argentina, I don't know what inflation rate is now, but it was like 100% before the new the new libertarian prime minister. I don't know if he's had an impact on that yet, but there's collapsed economies and political systems in Africa and all over the world. And so these people, they literally have no access to banking or access to money, and Bitcoin really is the only option almost. And so I think that's a key point, is that people's sensitivity to that danger of having their assets confiscated is more of a reality in a place like Lebanon than it is here, but maybe it's closer to being a reality here than people really think. But that is one of the things about Bitcoin that really attracted me was, yes, it's a protection against fiat money printing, but it does allow you to carry your assets and wealth with you in case all hell breaks loose here, which can happen very quickly, as as the Germans saw when Hitler took over, and so forth. I mean, the world can fall apart fast. You could have World War III quickly. And so then what happens when the government decides to basically confiscate 90% of your wealth or all of your wealth for the war effort, so that can happen quickly. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, so, I don't want to dwell too much on my my topic, because I do want to get to everybody else's. But again, general message, I guess. My thought process this week is while the I'll just say it, while the craziest of the Bitcoiners are often antagonistic and divisive, I think they also serve an important purpose in shifting that Overton window, I think, towards more self-sovereignty. And again, as much as certain items I may disagree on, I do value that out of them. And I think they're doing Bitcoiners a service in a loud but effective way. So,
Yeah. Well, there's a place in Bitcoin world for everyone, that
Yeah.
we want everybody here. So,
Yeah.
not
Exactly.
everybody's going to agree. If the whole world is on Bitcoin, we're not all going to agree on everything, right?
Yeah,
So-
exactly. Yeah.
I have a question for you, Ben, regarding your thesis. Do you think that it will still keep up and keep the same speed, like shifting the Overton window for self-sovereignty, or it will get kind of it will fade away because we are early adopters, and that means that we need to study a lot to actually gain the trust in Bitcoin. And
Yeah.
that
Right.
study, that
You do have to
time
study.
which we spend inside these rabbit holes get us to these books like Sovereign Individual. Otherwise, I would never get to this book if I don't study and read
Right.
like a crazy guy, And once the Bitcoin will be like pretty normalized and we will have a hyper Bitcoinization, people will be not studying these niche topics around Bitcoin.
I think.
Yeah, I think that it's just.
Sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
I'm sorry. I didn't. Were you addressing me or?
Oh yeah, sorry. Different you guys.
All Bens respond to Ben. So
Right.
Ben, you go first, and then I'll follow. I have some thoughts.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think what happens a lot of times is events kind of educate people. People are not going to sit down and read a book or attend a lot of seminars and learn about something until they really feel a need to. I do think one of the greatest markets perhaps for Bitcoin are the gold bugs. There's a sort of survivalist, population out there that a lot of them are into gold and they don't believe in Bitcoin. And I think they could be educated very easily. But I think it's events like COVID, like the pandemic, when you had all the mandates and the lockdowns and so forth, and people saw that, hey, wait a second, this government really is not out for our interests. It's pretty much a corporation that's out for its own interest. And, what Elon Musk said, the government is no different from a corporation. It's got a profit motive, except that it has one thing that most corporations don't have, and that's a monopoly on the use of force against you. So that the government is very eager to use any excuse to exercise that monopoly power and force against you. Never let a crisis go to waste, right? And so the COVID pandemic provided that, and they wanted to see how far they could push the population, see what crazy things they could convince us to do, and it turned out that we could be convinced to do a lot of crazy things. So Bitcoin, I think, was I think events like that help educate people about the need for Bitcoin.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They definitely, I can tell you, it was very it was very instructive in Canada this past year, past 2 years rather. Matthias, to your question, I do think that for the average person, years from now, it does dissipate, right? But my hope is that in the thick of it right now, those that understand kind of these factions that are kind of bumping up against each other in the world, the top-down control versus the bottom-up self-sovereign, let the free market decide kind of ideals. I hope that, and I do kind of see it coming from people that, there's always trade-offs. Scaling is hard. I hope that the nature of Bitcoin in general, just from a base layer, instills enough checks and balances that even when there are missteps, they correct, just kind of naturally through economic incentive and top-down pressures. But I hope that the people that are around now that are building are building to be resilient against those problems, those inevitable problems of top-down control. Let's say Bitcoin doesn't change at all on the base layer from here. Let's say it just becomes it ossifies entirely. I hope that there's enough incentive and, again, checks and balances at the base layer that building things like, Fedimints and Cashew and all that stuff on top of Bitcoin that afford people fantastic privacy and the ability to transact with whoever they want, despite the inherent trust in those systems, that they're at least segregated enough to small communities where failures that do arise are not super frequent, and that it's instructive of people of how to move forward in making those systems resilient and auditable, so that, yes, you have a trust trade-off, but it's difficult to stamp out from a top-down perspective as well. So yeah, I mean, the average person, I think 50 years from now, won't be thinking about how self-sovereign they want to be. And I hope the reason for that is because the systems that were built now are incredibly resilient to these top-down pressures that we kind of live in right now. So but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just a guy. I don't know.
I think one of the confusions that people have, and I think it was part of the block size war in 2017, is that people are confused that we have to be able to buy our cup of coffee with Bitcoin. We have to be able to, it's not really useful in many places for that. Certainly, you can't do that very easily around here. Maybe you can do it in El Salvador. But I always think of Bitcoin as a wealth storage system. That, fiat, at least the dollar, is fine for, going to the grocery store and buying groceries, but it's not very good for storing wealth. And I think part of the confusion comes from the title of the white paper. And I'd just like to get your thoughts on this. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, cash. And I'm just going to give you my theory about it. Is I think that they did intend it to be a cash system, kind of an alternative money, but I think it evolved into a wealth storage system as it got bigger. And it's 10 minutes to make a transaction, it's or longer. And so it's not really practical for buying a cup of coffee. You have the Lightning and layer 2 solutions and so forth built on top of it. But I think that became a real confusion. And so you had like XRP Ripple and all these, trash coins developing, because on that theory that Bitcoin really wasn't good for transactions, we need something quicker and faster. Well, fiat is faster, right? At least, you can carry cash in your wallet, credit card, get your groceries. And right now, at least in the United States, it's difficult to do that. So what are your thoughts about Satoshi's title of his white paper, Bitcoin, peer-to-peer electronic cash system, but actually what Bitcoin has turned out to be is a wealth storage system more. And of course, Satoshi, the way he constructed Bitcoin, the number one emphasis was security, because if it's not secure, it's a decentralized network. There's no human. He's removed humans from the governance of the money, essentially, and it's a robot. But if anyone could ever crack that, obviously the money would become worthless. So security had to be the number one priority. And sort of like gold is the base layer for the money, right? It used to be the base layer for the dollar, used to be the base layer for other currencies. But then the temptation to, once you put paper on top of it and there's start off as gold certificates, the temptation for government is always to print more and more of it at faster and faster rates. So what are your thoughts about what Satoshi meant? Do you think he meant a cash system, daily transactions, or do you think he was building a wealth storage system? Is it just something that kind of evolved into that? What are your thoughts? And also the title of the white paper being kind of a root of the confusion of what Bitcoin is.
I want to toss this to maybe John or Matyas to answer, because yeah, I'm curious your thoughts.
I'm gonna answer very quickly. Bitcoin is for everyone is something different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you can choose how you want to choose. Sorry.
I said it's a bit of a mirror, isn't it?
Yeah. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
So I think money is just the first use case of Bitcoin. It's just the easiest thing that people can see a use case for. So I think there's a logic in people first see the money and then they see the other thing. So I don't know if that was the rationale in the white paper, but I think it's a logical first step. And then just one thing on Ben's, sorry, BTC sessions, like bullish round here. Why is he bullish? I just wanted to say that, yeah, I totally agree with your thesis there. I mean, really, we need to teach by example as much as anything else. If we tell people, hey, self-sovereignty is super important, it's like, okay, so do you practice that? And you say no, then it's really hollow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the most powerful way to teach someone, is to show someone, right, with how you actually act yourself.
Interesting. Well, gentlemen, okay, I'm gonna put a bow on this conversation here, because I want to get to everything else here, but yeah, I'm just thankful for this shift towards self-sovereignty, and this kind of like group that tries to instill those values as much as humanly possible, while being aware that not everyone will be able to live up to that ideal at all times, but that's okay. But with that, I'm going to rotate. I'm going to toss it to Matyas here, and I'm going to cue you up with the same question everybody gets. Why are you bullish? Take it away.
So yeah, I'm incredibly bullish, and it's not because it's 2024. Well, it is a little bit, yeah. And I can be talking about the price, but that would be probably boring, or about the technology. Stratum V2 now today. That's very exciting, but you would probably get someone better to talk about it. So I choose a culture topic, and that's Bitcoin community. I'm really bullish on people. I'm really bullish on especially Czech Bitcoin community. I am really proud about what has been created in Czech, and how the community grew. And just to give you some context and numbers, why I'm so bullish, we have some estimations how many Bitcoiners are in Czech and crypto users in general. And we estimate there is a 300,000, maybe even 500,000 of Bitcoiners, crypto users in Czech, with 10 million inhabitants. That's a quite a good percentage, yeah. And these people, I know them very well, because we organize conferences since 2020, and many of them are coming regularly to our conferences. The Chain Camp has 2,200 people in 2021 and 2022. So it's a big conference, and these people grew with us. And I know that they are very well educated. They are technically savage. They use Bitcoin how it was intended, peer-to-peer. They self-custody, and they like to geek out about and use it as a tool of freedom. So I'm very bullish about the Czech Bitcoin community, and maybe it would be even good. And maybe you are curious, why is that? Yeah, and people are always asking me, and they don't know about Czechs. Yeah, we are a small country in the middle of Europe. How is that the Czech is so strong in Bitcoin? And I think I have the answer, or maybe partially I can cover that. There are, I think, two reasons. The first one are the companies, Satoshi Labs, Brains, General Bytes. They are all from Czech. They have been there since the very beginning. It all started in 2012 when Marek Palatinus invented the first ever mining pool, Slash pool, now operated by Brains, until now mined more than 1 million Bitcoins. So probably there will be never a second pool with that many Bitcoin mined. I think it's impossible now. After that, there was the first ever hardware wallet manufactured by Stick and Slash together with BIP39. Yeah, the scheme we are all using, seed phrase. This happened in 2012, I think. Then we have a biggest Bitcoin ATM manufacturer in Prague, General Bytes by Karel Kijovsky. These people were meeting and solving their own problems with Bitcoin. And you know how is it usually when you have the time for Bitcoin, it snowball. So it was snowballing since 2010 in very Bitcoin pure ethos, and that's why it grew so big. And now you can pay in more than 1,000 places all over the Czech Republic with Bitcoin for food, for beer, in 1,000 pubs. You can pay pretty much anything with Bitcoin in Czech, because our Czech biggest retailer is accepting Bitcoin, Alza.
Wow.
And Lightning, yeah. So it's a private. You can pay pretty much really anything. If you want to live on Bitcoin, you can in Czech. So last year we established the 21 fork 21 in Czech, and it quickly got traction. And now we have a regular meetups and groups in 30 cities. People are meeting, learning from each other, vexling, how we like to say that, if you exchange money for Bitcoin, and that's pretty bullish, I would say. And why is that? Why the company happened in Czech? Yeah, you can ask. It was an accident or why? Yeah, and I think that's because of the history, because we were under the communism for such a long time. People people couldn't do business, so they were eager to build. And our parents, they used to make stuff, because if you wanted to have something else in your home, other than two kinds of tables which were on the market, you had to make your own. So this craftsman culture give a very good base for Bitcoiners who were also like against governments and with this anarchic sparkle, you know. So we, like me and others, are the first generation of entrepreneurs in Czech, and we are eager to build. And if we can build on a tool like Bitcoin for freedom, with the hope which this brings, it's something so liberating and so exciting that we cannot resist, simply. And that's why I'm bullish.
I like that. It's very interesting that some of these things that were so integral to the early days of Bitcoin all came from the same place. Like, again, the mining pools, hardware, BIP39 seed phrases. I mean, some of my first Bitcoin are from Bitcoin ATMs, and like I've seen General Bytes ATMs in Calgary here. Yeah, it's kind of cool to see this epicenter of Bitcoin, and I mean, there's definitely been time to cultivate that culture there, and it comes through again. Going to Prague last year, I don't know what I expected, but you had told me before. You're like, oh yeah, we had a Czech conference last year, and there's like a couple thousand people or something, and I was like, really? What? Really? I had no idea, and then I show up, and this event was large. Like, I was, but not just large, but like very well curated, I will say. Like, there's a focus there where, you know, everything that I saw on stage was, I mean, again, well organized, well put together, but like had a to a degree like an educational ethos to it, and a very focused, I will say. And then I expected to walk out onto, say, like the trade room floor where all the booths are and everything. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I mean, you gotta fund the conference somehow. There's gonna be some riffraff here. No, I was very pleasant. I walked out, and there weren't the, you know, leverage up on shit coins and like trade your life away kind of company. Like, that wasn't really there. Like, it was pretty well curated. Like, you guys did a really good job, and maybe that's because going back so far, there's been time to really kind of refine that messaging and refine kind of I guess goals and ethos. It seems like there's a bit of a culture there that lends itself to being high signal. Is my takeaway, and yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So there's something going down in Czech, and yeah, whatever it is, it's positive in my life, in my eyes. So I don't know, like I'm curious if Ben or John have any questions or comments on what you said there.
No, I think it's cool that I haven't been to Prague or Czech Republic myself, but for me, when you were talking, then I was thinking about Salvador, actually, right? It's like a small country with higher than average Bitcoin adoption, and I think maybe that's an emergent trend. Is there's going to be, before the whole world adopts Bitcoin, there's going to be certain locations, whether it's a town, village, street, or country, that has a higher adoption than others and kind of leads the way for the rest. So maybe Czech Republic is like one of those early leaders there.
Yeah, I've often thought that the U.S. would really be the last country, one of the last countries to fully adopt or widely adopt Bitcoin in daily life, because, you know, we are, as bad as our currency is, it's the most stable currency in the world. Whereas, you know, in Czech Republic, you've experienced communism. El Salvador, a lot of instability. And so any place that has experienced a lot of instability and turmoil, Bitcoin's going to be attractive to most people. Whereas a lot of Americans don't really see the immediate need for it. So I think we'll probably be among the last countries to see widespread Bitcoin adoption for that reason.
Yeah, it's I would echo that. Those that have the least to lose are going to recognize the solutions first, right? If you're comfortable in a Western nation, and yeah, things are not as great as they used to be, but you're still doing pretty good.
Right.
There's nothing fresh in your mind to say I need to act now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my inclination. Where I think people that, again, like El Salvador, there's reason that might be attractive, and part of it might be, well, what, you know, why not try something new, right? And in terms of Czech, there again, like there's a recent history that is still kind of fresh in the mind of in some generations there, and so maybe there's a bit of an inclination just generationally to have certain views and values that incline people towards Bitcoin and self-sovereignty.
Yeah. I think Bitcoin is the solution, right? But in order to see the solution, you first need to recognize that there's a problem. So it makes sense that places that are coming out of recent obvious problems are going to be the first to look for an alternative, and then in that find Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, my wife, she escaped from communism. She's Laotian and escaped from Laos when she was 13, when the communists took over in 1975, and her mom saw what was happening, and she sewed gold into the fibers of her clothing, and they got across the Mekong River. They actually got separated. One had to walk by herself through the jungle for 5 days and 5 nights, got to a Thai refugee camp, and stayed there for 18 months and ended up here. And she arrived with 2 dresses and 1 pair of sandals. So she really understands like what can happen. Now, she's not really totally sold on Bitcoin. She says, well, shouldn't we have some gold? Because gold literally saved her life.
Yeah.
But she likes it now that it's no longer 15,000
Yeah.
coin and it's 63,000. She
Funny,
likes it a
that
lot
was
better
my
now.
wife coming around point too.
But yeah. But
It's no
Bitcoin
longer-
surely would be, if you could carry, if the internet and Bitcoin had existed back then, it would have been a lot easier than try to carry gold around with you. In fact, they got their gold robbed basically from them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that your wife was from Laos. I actually, with my wife, we did a trip to Southeast Asia, and we went up in a longboat along the Mekong River, and I can imagine just trying to navigate like walking
Getting across in the middle of the night. Yeah.
My God.
Yeah,
That's
it's pretty. It's
wild.
actually a really. It's like a story out of the Killing Fields. If you've seen that movie, it's quite something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's oof.
yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
we
so
we
she
did
is
go to
definitely
Cambodia as
very
well.
attuned to what can happen.
Yeah.
One day, it's idyllic life. They're kind of like living life, and then all of a sudden, the communists are taking over,
Yeah.
and it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's wild. Well, I really enjoyed that topic, Matthias. Maybe if you want to let people know when the conference is happening, if you're in the area, I highly recommend. But when is that happening?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. It's in June. It's a summer in Prague, so it's 13 to 15 June. And if you want to come to the DevHack Day, which is only for like really geeks, Bitcoin geeks, that's Wednesday, 12th of June. So it's a 4-day conference in the total.
Yeah, and it's something like 5 or 6 days or something like that after the Oslo Freedom Forum, correct?
Yep, something like that.
Yeah. So if you're going to one, then they're in close proximity, and it's only like an hour and a half flight. So yeah, I had a good time. I'll be seeing you in a few months here. So
yeah, with
looking
a
forward
few
to it.
other Canadians, right?
Yeah,
Francis, Madex, Dave Bradley,
Yeah.
Anil. Yeah.
all my I used to work at Bull Bitcoin with Francis and Madex and Dave. So yeah, it'll be good. Looking forward to that. Awesome. All right, cool. Well, we're gonna do a rotation again. I'm gonna toss it down to Ben, and I'll cue you up. Same question. Why are you
Same
bullish?
question. Yeah, why am I bullish? It really is almost mathematical for me. It's once you're kind of sold on the idea that Bitcoin is secure, and my son kind of introduced me to it, I think in 2014-ish, something like that, and I watched it since then. And the only question was adoption. There's a fixed supply, 21 million, and the only one there'll be never any more than 21 million Bitcoins. And so then the only question would be, is there going to be widespread public adoption? It's the demand side of the equation. And so then I just watched it. And then around 2019, I decided, after the 2017, the crash from December 2017, and then it started coming back after the 85% drop, I thought they can't kill this thing. And it had gotten through a lot of crises. There's the Mt. Gox exchange hack crisis, and then there was the Silk Road crisis. And so Bitcoin went through a lot of like really major PR problems in the early days, and it survived all of that. But I would say that the COVID pandemic and all the money printing, that was huge. I mean, I was sold on Bitcoin before then, but that was a confirmation that that this is the right move here, because they're just going to keep printing money. We have a $34 trillion, $34.5 trillion national debt right now. It won't be long before it's 100 trillion, and they're just going to have to keep printing money at faster and faster rates just to cover the interest payments. The interest payments on the national debt this year will be more than $1 trillion, which is more than we spend on national defense. And then when it gets to be, we have a $100 trillion national debt, we'll have $3 trillion in interest payments. And so pretty soon you're the Weimar Republic, which which gave us Hitler. So so the money printing from the COVID pandemic and since then was a big persuader. But I would say another big persuader to me was when China cracked down on Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin transactions in the summer of 2021. They outlawed mining, and I think they outlawed Bitcoin transactions too, to such an extent that all the mining left China. And at that point, up until then, 60% of the Bitcoin mining was actually being done in China. And so there was a big question in the Bitcoin community with this crackdown: is that going to be the end of Bitcoin? Because it's 60% of the mining is being done in China, and it went down to zero. And I like to watch the hash rate, which is the compute power of the network. And indeed, the hash rate did drop radically when China was cracking down on the mining, outlawing the mining, and the price also dropped, I think, to $30,000 from 60,000 or something like that. And then, but very quickly, the hash rate came back as the Chinese miners left China and set up their mining operations in other countries like Kazakhstan and the United States, and elsewhere, places that were more hospitable to Bitcoin mining. And the hash rate came back and the price came back. And that told me that if China couldn't kill Bitcoin, that's pretty good evidence that Bitcoin is indestructible. And then today, I think, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 20% of the Bitcoin mining is back in China, right? So it looks like the Chinese government, which is a totalitarian communist regime, not really communist, but it's totalitarian. If they can't kill Bitcoin even in China, I mean, that's pretty strong proof that Bitcoin can't be killed. And the underlying technology has never been hacked. Bitcoin exchanges get hacked, but not the underlying technology. And of course, Bitcoin's been around now for 15 years, and the first Bitcoin transaction was in 2010 when Laszlo Hanyecz bought the 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. So Bitcoin was 1/3 of 1 penny a coin back then. Now it's 63,000. It's gone through all these crises and all these attacks. The underlying technology has never been hacked. And so it does seem to be an indestructible money.
Yeah.
So Satoshi, I think, was absolutely correct to just focus entirely on security and not so much on speed. Gold is not quick. And some people have called the Bitcoin digital gold. Bitcoin is built for security. Gold is not fast either. It's not quick to send your gold bar from New York to London, and it's actually quite costly to do that. So Bitcoin really is built like an armored truck, like Fort Knox, except much more secure than that. And it's weathered every storm imaginable. And so that was very persuasive to me, all those events.
I think I mean, China is the perfect example of what a government crackdown looks like, and if one of the more totalitarian governments on the globe can say it's illegal to mine Bitcoin and 20% of hash not just comes back, but like in the comments here, it never left. That's correct. Like,
is that true? Never left?
like,
Okay.
it
Didn't it
just
go down to
kinda,
0 at one point, or at least
well,
temporarily?
reportedly, I think
Yeah.
the hash probably turned off and then turned back on again, more realistically. But at the end of the day, like the hash, like it migrated to more favorable jurisdictions, but some of it is just still running there, right?
Wow.
And the thing is, the incentives, it's so difficult to fully shut down, especially in these rural areas in China. Like, you get a government official out there and you've got people that are basically utilizing hydropower that is waste, that is doing nothing, that is far more than they could ever use locally at this town or wherever they're using it. And it's way too far from the next local center to do transmission lines. It's just waste. And then a government official comes and says, you're not allowed to do this. And the locals say, well, we're making X amount here. What percentage of this might you like in order for us to continue doing this? Like, as long as we're still making some profit, you could also make a whole bunch of profit. And so, again, like the profit motive allows it to continue to proliferate. And even if they were completely totalitarian, look at the hash rate. Like, even the 20% that remains, look at how much it's gone up since that ban. It's like, it's resilient as hell, and it seeks out the cheapest, most efficient sources of power. Whatever the cheapest source of power is, it'll gravitate towards, and that tends to be waste. Stuff
Absolutely.
that is impossible to get to a grid that nobody else has a use for. They'll gobble that up. So
you see people boiling the fat from the waste from the food that they're cooking and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
wild.
and that's really important. Is what makes Bitcoin, of course, different from all the other cryptos is the decentralization, just the extent of the decentralization.
Mhm.
There's the other cryptos, with the exception of a few, don't even try to compete with Bitcoin as decentralized digital money. There's a few like Litecoin, which is tiny compared to Bitcoin, or Dogecoin,
Mhm.
which is only anything because Elon, for some reason, decided he liked it. I guess it's a meme coin, a joke, a parody of Bitcoin. So Elon decided he liked it, which really disappointed me a lot because I like Elon a lot. But he hasn't really made an effort to understand Bitcoin, and that
Yeah.
disappoints me about Elon. But there's none of the other 30,000 cryptos, except with the exception of maybe 4 or 5, are even trying to compete with Bitcoin as decentralized digital money. And those that are, their networks are so small that there's no way they could withstand any kind of major denial of service attack. But Bitcoin can,
Yeah.
because the network is big enough, and
Mhm.
dispersed enough, and so even China can't outlaw it in China, can't get rid of it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm curious to hear the thoughts of Matyas and John. So whoever wants to dive in.
Yeah, well, I really love all the reasons of why Ben is bullish, and especially the mining one. And I can see that the mining is innovating so quickly, and in Europe we are focused on the energy part. And few weeks ago I was in Madeira and I was talking to people on the booth 21 Energy. They are doing the heaters. They are like they put one S9 and some system around it, and pretty much it's heating, and you can put it in, at home. They downgraded the fans, so it's not making so much noise, and they told me the statistics that 6 millions of households would cover the whole hash rate of Bitcoin network. So that's just crazy. Yeah? It's like it's just the Czech Republic, if I can take it from this point of view. If every single household would have this small heater at home, we would cover the whole mining. So this is just another great step for decentralization and normalizing Bitcoin mining, because no one can tell you that you cannot heat your home.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing too is about the whole mining. You know, people criticize Bitcoin for the use of electricity and so forth, but it actually incentivizes the dispersal of the population, because the miners want to find the cheapest possible energy, and so it incentivizes the creation of cheap energy, of cheap free energy, you know, whether it's solar power or hydropower, or gets people off the grid. You know, they leave the grid to create more energy, so it incentivizes the creation of more free energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. John, do you want to dive in? Any comments, questions regarding Ben's?
Yeah, no, totally agree with everything that Ben said there. That and I think to encapsulate it in a sentence, it's once something becomes unstoppable, it becomes inevitable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Bitcoin is at the point where it is unstoppable. It has survived so many tests.
Everything.
Like I thought as well when I first got into Bitcoin, you know, there were different events for me, but like I seriously questioned whether it would survive, right? And it's had so many tests that it can't be stopped, it can't be killed, and therefore it will win, right? It's kind of the same. It's this really fascinating game theory that I think countries, you know, whether governments, corporations, they're all going to adopt Bitcoin because eventually someone will, because it's not going away. So they want to do it first. So it's this really fascinating game theory, but the core of it is you can't stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. You know, governments adopting Bitcoin as part of their treasury reserve. Like, you know, you'd have to think that eventually the United States and these big powers are going to want some Bitcoin as part of their treasury. Of course, they do have some anyway. Yeah, they've confiscated it from criminals and so forth. But yeah, I think I could see governments, you know, thinking, well, we want some gold, but maybe we should also have some Bitcoin. You know, I could see the United States doing that.
I would be surprised if governments like the United States, Canada, England, whatever countries that print their own currency aren't already accumulating Bitcoin.
I think so.
Secretly, because there's two scenarios. One is that Bitcoin succeeds, and the other is that Bitcoin fails. If Bitcoin fails, they just never tell anyone, right? And they just created money out of thin air to turn it into Bitcoin. So there's no downside. If Bitcoin succeeds, they're like, oh yeah, well, we knew it was going to succeed. So way back in 2020, we started accumulating it, but like we didn't want to shock the market or anything, but we saw the future. So you're welcome. Now we have a ton of money. Like there's no downside. There's only upside. So there must be some people in decision-making positions that think about it that way and have already started.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one crisis too, I forgot to mention, which also Bitcoin survived, and I'd had no doubt it would survive. It was in 2022. You had all the scammers, the crypto scammers like SBF and Do Kwon and the Terra Luna scandal, and just one trash coin after another. And, you know, Alex Mashinsky with the Celsius, you know, and all the people, they're offering 20%, interest rates if you stake your coin with them, and then they take all your Bitcoin. And so they're just all those scams that were going on in 2022, and of course that affected Bitcoin's price. It dropped to 16,000 or 15,600. I actually liked it when Bitcoin dropped because it kind of flushed out all the scams. I think a great cleansing was needed, and so Bitcoin, basically the price dropped and flushed out all the scammers so that it could come back. And so I think what we really have to be vigilant about is explaining to people the difference between Bitcoin and all these other trash coins that are out there, because a whole new generation of trash coins is being created. It's a different set of trash coins than existed the last cycle, and particularly people who are new to this space are susceptible to that. They think they missed out on Bitcoin, or they missed out on the big price increase. So what else is there in crypto world to invest in? So I do think we need to be vigilant about explaining to people the difference between Bitcoin and all the other cryptos.
Mhm.
What is bad, Ben? That maybe there will be shitcoins on Bitcoin. So how we want to describe that?
Yeah. I get the sense that, unfortunately, all of the lessons that brought us from crypto to Bitcoin, that have been endured over the past 15 years, I kind of feel like all of that shit is just going to happen all over again, but
feel
on
too.
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know anything about ordinals, but that's kind of how I feel about that. And
yeah. I mean, I always think back to, I went to Riga in 2019, and again, I had a really good time there. It was super high signal and everything, but there were like some side events, and I went with Francis from Bull Bitcoin and like the whole team, and we went to, can't remember what the presentation was, but it was something along the lines of building some like AI thing on top of Bitcoin or whatever, and it had to do with like it was some kind of far out idea, but it was like on Bitcoin. And I remember I had just kind of like 2019 was the time that I came to, oh yeah, definitely Bitcoin only, was kind of as I was settling. I mean, obviously 2017, 2018 helped a lot with that ICO implosion, but I was firmly in the, I'm not going to deal with anything other than Bitcoin at that point. But then after watching that presentation afterwards, I asked Francis, I was like, what do you think about that? And his response was pretty simple. And he said, if something was a bad idea on a different blockchain, it's probably a bad idea on top of Bitcoin too. And I think that might be because Bitcoiners, every cycle has brought new lessons, right? And so like I'd say that 2017 is very much what spawned the Bitcoin only ethos. Or I mean, it was brewing, but 2017 and the ICO implosion spawned that Bitcoin only ethos. The Bitcoin standard was released in 2018, just to give like a timeline.
I didn't realize it was that old. Okay.
Yeah. So 2018. So Bitcoin standard comes out like kind of, I think that spawned a lot of different content in and around why Bitcoin is different from everything else. But then, so a lot of people recognize Bitcoin only, and it gets to 2021. Sure, a lot of people were smart in the realm of like, okay, let's ignore the noise and everything. But a lot of people, despite being Bitcoin only, got pulled into Bitcoin only leverage. And so that was like a large part of the puzzle that also was then learned on top of custodians and things like that.
Gemini Earn, and stuff like that. Yeah.
So like the mixture of leverage and custody, that was a big learning lesson. And now I think we're very much about to learn the lesson of exactly what Francis said. If it was a bad idea on another blockchain, it's probably a bad idea on top of Bitcoin as well.
That's a great point.
That's coming.
That's a great point.
The history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Bitcoin it attracts techies. I'm not a techie. I'm an English literature major, but I had to kind of learn it kind of just conceptually what was happening there. But Bitcoin and just crypto generally, it attracts a lot of techies, right? And what do techies want to do? They want to build applications. They want to build new features. It's like Microsoft drives me nuts with all the new features. I like the old Microsoft, like back in 98 or so, I like that Microsoft. I don't really like the new Microsoft, but the tech companies and technology people, they always want to add new features. And so that's the danger, I think, with Bitcoin, is that you're going to get the techies that are going to be trying to add new features to Bitcoin. No, Bitcoin is just money. It's just honest money. That's all it's trying to be. It's a well-stored system. It's honest money. And it's not supposed to have all these features. Gold does not have a lot of features. It's just,
you can do features in subsequent, like again, and those ones will. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see layer 2 Bitcoin used as a mechanism to repeat the crypto insanity.
You can already see it. You can already see it happening.
You can already see it. And so, unfortunately, yeah, I think that's where we're headed. I think that it might be a couple cycles of that, right? Like, because the altcoins are still around. You're still seeing all of that BS. I think that this cycle, you'll see a mixture of both. But through that cycle, hopefully, at least you get the all this other crap that's not Bitcoin kind of goes away. But I still think we're in for another whole round of like, well, now that all this stuff is on top of Bitcoin, it's totally okay. And it won't be. But
no,
I mean, there's no better teacher than pain, and so more pain is going to come.
But how often do people have to learn the same lesson? Just every few years, it's like the same lesson. Of course, it's a new group of people that's coming in.
Yeah.
Maybe.
What if we're just doomed to Bitcoin only, and then like each layer, it's like, well, the shitcoins on layer 2 totally didn't work, but like layer 3 shitcoins,
this time it's gonna work.
Is that where we're headed? I hope not. God, I hope not.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. But anyways, okay. Well, I enjoyed this line of thinking, this topic. I thought that was great. I am conscious of time, so I do want to do another rotation here quick, and I'm going to toss it to John. John, I'm going to queue you up. Thank you for hanging in tough here. But finally, John, why are you bullish?
Yeah, so I am bullish because of permissionless education. So to go back a little bit there, I'll give some context. So we have, I wanted to see if it would come out, but I'm experimenting with lighting here. I don't think it's really come out. But the node network that I mentioned earlier, so those are frontline Bitcoin educators around the world that agree to a core set of values. So that is just that the education is independent, impartial, community-led, Bitcoin-only, quality, and teaches empowerment. And then they also have to do proof of work. And those are basically the requirements, and then you apply it, self-governance. So like the nodes themselves vote whether to allow or not a new node, and they're pretty strict. In the last month, there were 4 applicants and only 1 was accepted. But the great thing, so like I have the immense privilege of being in touch with some of these educators around the world. And the great thing about it is, like, they're joining this network, but they don't have to, right? They're actually just doing it on their own, in their own communities. They're finding their own ways to get it done. And, the theory of the network is that we are more than the sum of our parts, but also, again, it's not necessary. The ideal candidate is someone that is like, hey, Bitcoin teaches me that I don't have to wait for anyone else. I could do it myself. And there's a certain subset of those people that value education, and they just do it. They're just doing it. And that is early. I really think that this is going to grow, and there are going to be these hubs, these community centers, just like the corner of a certain brewery in a city, right? That are going to be these education hubs for real Bitcoin education. I'm not talking about, something with any other motive other than Bitcoin, right? And as a tool for empowerment. And that that makes Bitcoin unstoppable, right? Again, if you could educate people about it, then people won't fall for scams. And scams, they'll know how to use it. They'll know what not to do, what to do. Again, they'll make their own choices, but they're much more likely to make the right choices when they're well educated. And it becomes unstoppable then. And again, once it becomes unstoppable, it becomes inevitable. And I really think that's the route that we're on. And for me, a really big reason for that is because of permissionless education.
That's a great, I mean, you know that I love the whole education side of Bitcoin. I think it's integral. Information wants to be free.
Yeah.
And there's nothing harder in the age of information to crack down upon than education. And people are hungry for it. And when you get the type of, I'm going to say, gaslighting that we get in our day-to-day lives, everything's fine, everything's better than it's ever been. But people feel the exact opposite. They go in search of education of why that might be. And I think that's why you see a lot of people, unfortunately, in some cases, getting into the crypto space because are kind of we're conditioned to want to find the easy, quick way, the quick fix and everything. But when people recognize that that's exactly the issue, that everything is a quick fix and nobody wants to go through the hard steps to actually create value and save and think long term, when they realize that's the actual issue and they make that difficult shift, like they're inclined, they want to eat it up. And that's why you see this passion out of Bitcoiners where it's like a switch flicks and, oh my God, I now see the issue. I need to ingest every bit of knowledge that I can to better understand why this has happened and how to fix it. I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, but also like what you do in is it Alberta, the stats market? Like I think the first post that I saw from you about that was, I'm not going to wait. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but this is something I want to be done. So I'm not going to wait for someone else to do it. I'm going to do it myself. And that is something that's like a lesson imbued in Bitcoin itself. That if you want the world to be different, make it so, right? Don't wait for someone else. Make it so yourself. And like, again, like education is the thing that's most important to me, but that could translate into different areas for other people, right? But the point is that Bitcoin really encourages us to take control of our own destiny. Yeah.
Would you echo that, Matyas?
Yeah, definitely. No, it was well put it, and Bitcoin it's a huge hope. But I have a question for John. If you could summarize, like, what age are the kids you are teaching, and what interests them the most? If you can just pinpoint some topics.
Yeah. So the diploma that I brought up before, that was developed for high school age students, so like teenagers, basically. We started it in the public school system on our own, but we also teach it around the country, open enrollment. Like actually, literally where I'm sitting now is a classroom in a house that we rent, and all ages take that. And they actually get it about as quickly as teenagers, like they don't have to unlearn as much. So it's 13 and up. And actually, literally last night, I had a meeting with the Minister of Education here, as well as Lena from the Little Hodler. Lena's great. And they are going to, we're going to work together to develop curriculum for younger ages from 7 to 9, and then from 10 to 12 in the Bitcoin diploma from 13 and up. But to get to, so all ages is one answer to your question. And another question that you asked is what are people most drawn to? So I think what people are actually most drawn to, and again, so we're targeting pre-coiners, right? We're targeting people that don't have any prior knowledge about Bitcoin, little to no. So what they seem to be most interested in, two things. One is actually not even Bitcoin itself, but the financial literacy part, like just learning about money itself. They're like, wait, I didn't know that. Oh, that's interesting. So you're saying that this thing that I interact with every day, okay, like it clicks. Like, oh, I've never thought about this really important aspect of my life before. So people are just interested in learning about financial literacy. And then when they start to use Bitcoin, we try to make it as interactive as possible. So like using Lightning, then we have them download a wallet, we send them a transaction, they send it to somebody else, right? So they get that first experience. And almost always there's two aha moments in that here. The first one is, that's it? Like, it's as easy as that? I thought that I had to be some technical guru to get this. And the second one, and you know, this is in Central America. El Salvador has its own recent dark history, and we're pretty close to Venezuela and Nicaragua, which are undergoing current darkness, right? So people are things like censorship resistance are very real to people here. So when we explain it to people like, hey, you know, I just sent you value to your phone, right? And that was like so easy. They're like, yeah. Did you have to put your, you know, identity document in? Did you have to apply for it? Did you have to ask permission? Did it go through anything else? And they're like, no, actually it didn't. We just sent it, right? So you could also send that to Venezuela. You could send it to China. You could send it to Nicaragua, and no one can stop it. And that's like a second aha moment for them, right? Like, oh, okay, so like I'm actually in control. And again, back to that original point about financial literacy, it's something that they don't even think about before. They're not thinking that most people don't have the conscious thought, I'm not in control of my money. But once you show them this is what being in control of your money means, then it's like, oh, wait a second. So let me take a step back. So I'm not actually in control of this other thing.
Yeah. It's not yours. It's IOUs, right?
Yeah.
It's wild to think that there's a generation, an entire generation, that the vast majority of their financial transactions have never been in any sort of self-sovereign way. Like they've barely touched cash ever.
Right.
You know, like they've always been subject to debasement, but they've also always been subject to censorship and seizure.
Yeah, but people don't even realize it, right? Like you have to recognize the problem, and I think Bitcoin being the solution, you could go both ways. I think the easiest thing is to recognize the problem, then move on to the solution. But there are people that see the benefit of Bitcoin and then see the problem because of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, so yeah, I actually can't do that with dollars. Like it's actually there's a lot of Venezuelans that live here, and it is very difficult to send value to Venezuela now.
Yeah.
Not with Bitcoin though.
I've got to give a shout out to somebody in the chat. My favorite thing is when this person says something prolific because of their screen name, but Pood in the cereal had something very clever to say. He said that money is the thing that most people want but least understand.
Yeah, that's so true.
Very true. Again, gems of wisdom coming from Pood in the cereal. So thank you. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, that's great. Is anybody, I don't know if anybody has anything else on the permissionless education track, comments or questions or anything else that you want to tag on before we start wrapping up with final thoughts here. I'll leave it open if anybody does.
Well, I think that was a great point about the people don't even carry cash anymore. They're reliant on Venmo or, you know, these apps and so forth. But if the bank at any point decides to say, just not let you transact, you literally would starve. You know,
Mhm.
you wouldn't be able to buy anything. So that is something to think about. I mean, really.
We literally saw that. There was a, I don't know if you guys saw, there's a post going around the other day. It was the opposition party of India. They got fully debanked.
Yeah.
And they're just like, we can't even campaign anymore. We can't do anything. We just have no access to anything. I think it was Gladstein that shared it. But I
Wow.
mean, like, what better example of like in a large country where the opposition party gets all their funding and all of their bank accounts yanked. Unbelievable.
That's going to orange pill a lot of people.
Yep.
It is. It is. I would be surprised if
how about
India
Canada? We know where they seized the bank accounts, froze the bank accounts of the truckers and the donations that were coming into the truckers, right?
Yeah. That was Bitcoin was the only digital donation mechanism that successfully made it to its intended recipients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As well. I'm glad that Matyas is here because that was he was nice enough to have me last year, and I did a keynote talk on the entirety of the trucker protest, what happened, but more importantly, the lessons we learned and how to fix them. And so I went through like a laundry list of like, here's the tools, here's what we did, here's how we should have done it, here's all the tools in its current iteration of what's best, and then here's a QR code so you can scan it and go to step-by-step tutorials on every single tutorial I just mentioned.
Well, and PayPal, they in their terms of service, they can go into your bank account and take up to $2,000 if you say something on social media that they don't like. They reserve the right to go into your bank account and impose up to a $2,000 fine. They just take it.
I saw that, which is hilarious because I remember when it came out, they said it and then everybody gave them shit. People were closing their PayPal accounts and then they walked it back. But then they like quietly
quietly put it back in. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I will say so again, I do a lot of one-on-ones with people and people will book me and they want to, you know, I prefer to get paid in Bitcoin. I've been living on a Bitcoin standard since 2020, more or less. And so I that's my preference. And I started using Zaprite as a payment portal to get paid, and you can plug in different Bitcoin wallets, but you can also accept fiat. And for me, there's a lot of newcomers that they want to, like they're brand new to Bitcoin. They just literally don't even know how to pay me in Bitcoin, and so that's fine. And the easiest way, unfortunately, still in Canada for me to get paid in dollars where I can quickly convert it and get it into a bank account and then hopefully just get rid of it for Bitcoin is PayPal, unfortunately.
Now, what about Cash App? No,
we don't have that here.
Or Azteco? Vouchers?
Well, it's a bit of a pain in the ass. Actually, no, I don't even think Azteco is available here anymore. It was briefly available and then it disappeared and then it's been off and on. So I'm not sure if that operates here anymore, but nonetheless, so like I want to incentivize people to pay me in Bitcoin. And so with Zaprite, they have this feature. Actually, they were just talking about me talking about this. Preston had Parker Lewis and Will. Yes, on not Will. What am I? Why am I? Will Cole on Preston's podcast the other day. They were talking about Zaprite, and they've got a feature where you can denominate your invoice, and you can have it in Bitcoin, and then if you accept fiat, you can add a premium, not a discount for Bitcoin, but a premium for fiat. And mentally, I think that does something where people, they don't want to act if they feel like they're going to gain a little bit of something, but they do really want to act if they feel like they're losing something they already had.
Yes.
And so the fiat premium is a very effective mechanism I found. And so what I did is it's actually a pain in the ass. Like when I look at how much gets scraped away, first of all, I tried that. They had a plugin for Stripe. Stripe is a shitcoin.
Oh, that's terrible.
Stripe is an absolute shitcoin. Like when I get a payment come in, first of all, they're like, well, right out the gate, you can't have half of this for like a month.
Right.
But you can have the other half in 11 days. It's just like the worst experience ever. Plus, they scrape away their fees and everything. At least with PayPal, I can get it quickly, but they like to give you an idea, if I get $1,000 worth of payments, I'm receiving by the time I convert from US dollars to Canadian dollars, and then like receive it, convert it, and send it to my bank account, I get 900.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's like between the spread on the currency conversion and then just straight out just receiving a payment on PayPal, it's 10% easy.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And so what I did is I started initially, I did on Zaprat, I did a 10% premium to cover that, but I still got a bunch of people paying me just via PayPal because they're like, that's easy. 20% now.
Yep.
I charge a 20% premium to pay me in dollars because I dislike them that much. And you know what? Works pretty well. Works pretty well. I mostly get paid in Bitcoin.
They figure out Bitcoin.
Yeah, they do. The incentive is there.
Yeah, good incentives.
Yeah, I think it's great. Honestly, if you're a person and you're kind of leaning towards a Bitcoin standard, and you would prefer to be paid in Bitcoin, fiat premium, not
That's
Bitcoin discount, fiat premium. That really mentally, I think it does the trick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, sorry for the rant there, but as I'm passionate about fiat premiums.
Thanks for a good tip. Yeah, I will change it on our website. We now offer a discount if you pay by Bitcoin.
There you go.
5% off.
Fiat premium.
Yeah,
Fiat
honestly,
premium. That's the way.
I think anybody watching this and like it, I'm telling you, it works. I think we need to create a movement, a hashtag, whatever it is, but hashtag fiat premium. It needs to happen. Nobody wants the dollars. I don't want to accept, like, sure, I'll accept it if you pay the premium so that I can convert it to sound money, but like, I don't want to deal with it anymore.
Yep.
I love it. Anyways, gentlemen, okay, so I don't know how we got down that path from permissionless education, but it was a fun rabbit hole wherever we went. Guys, I always like to, at the end of a show, as we're rounding out, I like to just do a quick down the line. Any final thoughts? Anything that you want to just cap off the conversation with? But secondly, also, if you have a recommendation, and the recommendation can take any form that you like. It could just be like a piece of life advice that you wish you had known earlier in your Bitcoin journey, but it may take the form of like a book you really liked, or a new video you saw, or an article you read, or an app or a device you tried. Anything like that is fair game. So I'll kind of get started here so you guys can take a moment to stew with that. But in terms of final thoughts here, I feel super excited about, again, kind of these various communities and the signal springing forth from them. This mentality of holding people to a higher standard, and letting the free market decide, but also these voices on either end of the spectrum helping kind of shift things to what I hope in the end is a reasonable compromise where people have the freedom to use their money as they see fit, and they're minimally impacted by people from the top down trying to control or prevent them from doing certain things. I hope that shift is enough in the right direction over time that a large government or a large body would be would be put out by trying to prevent people from acting in a certain way. I hope that's where we're headed. In terms of recommendations, honestly, my general recommendation is to gravitate towards the people, things, events, devices, apps, whatever it may be, that best reflect what you would like to see come forth in the world. You know, if you want to see a certain thing reflected around you, then don't necessarily put negative energy on the things that you dislike, but prop up the things you do. Prop up the things that you do like. Give energy to those. I think Jeff Booth has a great way of putting it. Is when you spend money rallying against the old system, you give that system more power. So put your energy into building the new system. And the same can be reflected just in your general values. Put your energy towards the values that you would like to see reflected back at you through the world. Don't worry about the things like, yes, I mean, obviously it's fine to say I dislike something, but the majority of your effort should be put towards the things that you think are valuable and that will bring value to others. And so that's my piece of advice for today. Matyas, I'm going to toss it to you. Any final thoughts and recommendations? Go ahead.
Yeah, that was a great advice, Ben, and I agree with you. I would maybe add one more thing to it, and that now is the best way to connect with the Bitcoin ecosystem. Just level up, find yourself a good project, what you like, and ask what they need. Yeah, just give them a feedback or do whatever is your edge and do it for them for free. Just contribute to the network, and you will see how you can grow quickly with the network. But don't wait up. Yeah, it's needed. I believe that Bitcoin really needs more people, more contributors, and everyone can find his way in. About the recommendation, I would say I would recommend a book, Atlas Shrugged from Arendt. If you haven't read that, it's really a good one. Prepare yourself. It's a it's a thick book. You could kill a person with it. I was postponing it this starting for maybe 2 years, and now I really regret, because once you read it, you can apply the thoughts in your own life, and it will make your decisions easier. So really read that one. It's a great book. It's quite famous in the Bitcoin circle. And the last thing, I would love to invite you all in Prague in June, because there is no better place to be than in Prague if you want to meet all European Bitcoiners in one place and bridge the language barrier, because there is so much interesting stuff happening behind these different languages which we have in Europe.
Awesome. Love it. Well, I'll be seeing you there, man. I'm very much looking forward to getting back to Prague. Beautiful city too. Really enjoyed it. So
thank you, man.
Yeah. Ben, I'll toss it to you. Final thoughts, recommendations, feel free.
Yeah, you mentioned Jeff Booth. Of course, he has a great book, The Cost of Tomorrow. And one thing I talk about a lot with people when I give them the reason for Bitcoin is people don't realize what the debasement of the money does. It is theft. It is counterfeiting. When we went off the dollar in 1971, I went completely off the dollar. We went off before that, but went completely off the dollar in 1971. 1 ounce of gold cost $35, and today it's like $2,200 an ounce. And so the dollar has lost 98.6 or 98.7% of its value since 1971. So instead of paying $45,000 to buy an average car today, you should be paying $800 for the same car. Just read a paper by Larry Summers, who was Obama's Treasury Secretary, not a conservative, not really a libertarian type. He was president of Harvard. He wrote a paper saying that the CPI, the official inflation number that's released by the government each month, is understating actual inflation by about 6%. Understating. So he's saying that, right? But then also another way that the government is robbing you with the money printing press is because of technological progress. prices should be going down 2 to 3% per year because farming gets more efficient. You know, you've got AI and robotic tractors and mass farming operations. So your groceries should be getting cheaper all the time. But they aren't. They're getting more expensive. And then you see these TikTok videos of, you know, people in their 20s and 30s and they can't afford groceries, and they're college educated and they're holding down 2 jobs. They can't afford groceries. They can't afford a place to live. They can't afford a car. And it's because of this money printing press. So basically the money printing, when we went off the gold standard in 1971 completely, we became a 100% money printing economy, counterfeiting operation, a criminal operation, really. It used to be a death penalty offense if you got caught counterfeiting. And that's what the government is doing every day. And the money's being printed at faster and faster rates because we have a $35 trillion national debt now, soon to be $100 trillion. And so to pay the interest rates, the interest payments that's due all the time on the national debt, they have to print more and more money. So what this amounts to is 100% taxation. So what I would recommend, tell all young people to do, is to forego personal consumption. You know, keep your car longer, you know, buy a used car, you know, buy a smaller house, and just put that extra cash into Bitcoin, because Bitcoin will appreciate over time against the dollar, especially if you dollar cost average in. So sometimes you're going to be buying it at the peak, but if you're, and sometimes at the, you know, when the Bitcoin has dropped a lot, but if you're just dollar cost averaging and all the way, you're going to be in great shape in about, you know, 10 years, which, you know, would be something I wish I had the option to do when I was young. So I tell young people that, yeah, put some money also in an S&P 500 index, you know, so that would be good if you want to diversify a little bit. Maybe some into real estate. Of course, the problem with real estate is you've got rising property taxes, rising insurance on the house, cost of maintenance, tenants that don't pay, and so forth. And so Bitcoin is the only asset really that allows you to carry your wealth with you in the event that you need to get out of the country for some reason, in the event of a political system collapse, which is more like, I think it could happen easily here. Certainly it's happened in El Salvador and Nicaragua and Venezuela and most other countries. Forego the personal consumption, and, you know, Bitcoin really is the life raft. That is it's the lifeboat from the fiat money printing system, because until Bitcoin, the government had really figured out a way to trap us in, right? So if you're invested in the stock market, and I think people should invest in a S&P 500 index fund, but they can confiscate that. They can confiscate your house. Look what's happening to Donald Trump. They're trying to take his Trump Tower and all of his assets there in New York State. I mean, it's literally a criminal operation going on. Just the government is a criminal operation. Regardless of what you think of Trump, I mean, the government should not just be able to take your skyscrapers and all your assets because they disagree with you politically. But the point is that the government had pretty well trapped us into this fiat box. You know, you have to buy stocks on a stock exchange. Well, that could be confiscated. And Bitcoin is really pretty unconfiscatable as long as they don't get a hold of you, and you can escape. You can escape with your assets, and really, it's the only way. It's the only asset that allows you to do that.
I would echo that entirely, and yeah, I mean, it's I think people will learn. Again, people tend to get burned before they truly learn the lesson, but there's a lot of great tools out there when it comes to being able to there's a lot of stories of people that have successfully escaped even just your nightmare scenario of escaping a country with your wealth.
Donald Trump wishes he had his assets in Bitcoin right now, right? I mean, that would probably be a better thing.
Be warming up. But I mean, one of the greatest, one of the first stories that I ever read about in regards to Bitcoin and like a real world use case of escaping tyranny was Roya Mahbub from Afghanistan. And she escaped. She was like a tech entrepreneur and built a company, a women's tech company in Afghanistan, where all of these women were not allowed to have bank accounts without the permission of their husbands or fathers or whatever. And if they ever got paid in cash, then that would typically be found and taken by any male member of their family or husband or whatever it is. And so she needed a discreet way to be able to pay them. And so Bitcoin became that solution. This was like 2013, 2014. And then later on, because it was under Taliban rule, they basically threatened her life. She had to escape the country, and she had to travel in many ways, but like partly on foot and like in boats and God knows what else. And so throughout her journey to get to Europe, most of her possessions were stolen or lost, except her Bitcoin.
Wow.
Because she had her 12 words.
That's awesome.
And so like if there's ever a greater example of like the power that Bitcoin can give people, that's a great one. So I really do love her story. I think it's incredible. And it was really cool to, having read that in 2014, I've now met her a handful of times. But she's a pretty inspiring person. She's a good one. For sure. Yeah. But anyways, I digress. Little rabbit hole there. Anyways, I'll toss it to John finally here. Dude, any final thoughts, recommendations? Go ahead.
Yeah. So kind of to echo what Canadian Ben, what that is, we're saying, I'll just rephrase it, that don't try to slow the bad, speed the good, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm not trying to tear down anything. I'm trying to build something to make the old system irrelevant, right? Rather than so in that, and then the book, which is really an essay that I would recommend that goes along with that, is Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau, which is funny because I think this came up the last time I was on Why Are We Bullish? But you know, the thesis of that is basically that we all have energy, and if we put it even in opposition, we often facilitate what we oppose, right? So the most powerful thing is to actually walk away. And I think Bitcoin allows us to actually walk away and put our energy into speeding the good rather than slowing the bad. And then finally, just to plug a couple of things, El Salvador and international. So El Salvador, come here, see it for yourself. Mm-hmm. It's really incredible what's happening here. Don't trust, verify. If you can, make it down here. And then the second thing, more international, if you are a Bitcoin, if you're interested in helping with Bitcoin education, one, don't wait for anyone, just go. And two, if you are interested in working with other Bitcoin educators, then reach out and maybe we could help facilitate something. Like we're all about sharing best practices and speeding up the timeline. So yeah, I mean, just follow us on Twitter or our website, myfirstbitcoin.io.
That's great. Absolutely. Shout out to Jaime, fellow Canadian, living in Canada, fellow Canadian that is one of the nodes in the My First Bitcoin network.
Yeah, great one. Yeah.
Awesome. In terms of book, I'd recommend.
Yes, of course. What's that title again?
Bitcoin. It's a beginner's guide, your off-ramp from the corrupt political system and protection from economic collapse.
Awesome. I love it. People go forth and Google and order. And also shout out in the comments to Victoria Stack Sats. What you resist persists.
Yes.
Great way of summing it up. Build the new system. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me and getting bullish on a Friday evening, or in Matyas's case, a Friday late evening and early morning. I very much appreciate you guys taking the time. Matyas, I will see you in Prague in a few short months. John, I'll see you in like a week and a half here.
Yeah.
My first time to El Salvador. Very much looking forward.
We do want to get to El Salvador.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing. It's a short trip. I'm only there for a week, but hopefully I get to see some stuff on there.
It's a good week to come.
Yeah, it should be good. And Ben, I'm sure we will cross paths in person at some point. Are you hitting some things up? Are you going to be around this
Well,
year?
we're in Fort Lauderdale. We live in Florida in the winter, and then Chicago area in the summer.
Okay, cool.
So,
Well, I'm thinking I might be out at Pacific and well, I mean Chicago, not too far. If you think about it,
how
maybe.
far are you? Where are you in Canada?
Well, I'm in Alberta, so I'm in Calgary.
Okay.
So I'm not super close to you, but I am heading out to Montreal for the Canadian Bitcoin conference. So if you want to,
okay,
hop-
yeah, that's not too far.
yeah,
Yeah,
if you want to hop north of the ice wall, then come up and say hi.
absolutely.
Yeah, we'll welcome you with open arms. So
That'd be great.
yeah. Anyways, well, thank you, gentlemen. Much appreciated that you guys would come and join me and get bullish on a Friday evening. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend, and I'm sure I will see you all in person soon enough. So thank you, guys.
Have a great weekend. Bye.
Thank you.
See you guys. All right.
Great meeting you guys.
Yeah, you as well. All right, everybody in the chat also, thank you guys so much for being here. If you haven't already, please do smash that like button, give this a share. All of the gentlemen that were on the show, of course, their handles are in the show notes. Please do give them a follow, check up on what they're up to, and plenty to check out there. Before we log off, I do want to give a shout out also for what's going on here in my hometown tomorrow, which is the SAT market. It was mentioned during the show, but we've got the Calgary SAT market tomorrow. This is the second one we're hosting. Very excited to have everybody back. It should be a good time. It was a blast last time. And hey, this time I got the venue on board. They're going to be accepting Bitcoin for food and beverages. So they're learning too. Everybody's coming in. So yeah, please do come down. I've also got a bunch of giveaways. We're going to be giving away a ton of crap. Not crap, actually. It's very high quality stuff. It's going to be really good. So I got a bunch of stuff we're going to be giving away tomorrow. Also going to try and do a bit of an education session on wallets and just a ton of awesome vendors in and around the Calgary area. So if you're in Calgary, if you're in and around Southern Alberta, or if last minute you're watching this from a neighboring province and you're like, fuck it, I'm just going to drive, do it. Come on in. It's going to be a good time. And there might even be something going on in the evening. Just let me know if you want to attend. But anyways, should be a good time. Saturday market here in Calgary. You can find it on meetup.com. I've got a little group that you can find, and I've been tweeting it and everything. It's on Nostr as well. So be sure to check it out. And yeah, and then plenty of other events on my website. Just head over to btcsessions.ca. There's an events section. It's got the market there, all that info there. It's also got the El Salvador having party that I'm going to be attending. It's got the conference in Montreal that I just mentioned, and it's got also Freedom Forum and Prague, of course, BTC Prague, all listed there on my website. You can find all of the relevant information there to be able to attend. Anyways, guys, that's enough of me. I hope you guys all enjoyed the show. I felt like this was a great rip, some good conversations to be had, but have a fantastic evening. I hope you all enjoy it, and I will see you again soon for your next daily session. Have a good one, guys. See you later.
HodlHodl the Bitcoin.